Episode 12, The Essential Big Wreck with Sky Kaufman. Music by Brian Ho. All right, so my guest this week on Playlist Parlay is Sky Kaufman, who completes the first complete band on the show. We didn't get Lauren Kaiser, we haven't quite got Rick Deputy, and Dave Dugan didn't make it to complete other bands, so Otra is the first complete band to show up on Playlist Parlay. The third member, of course, was Brian Jerka back in the day, and we don't play together anymore. And it's funny that I thought of that because just before we turned the mics back on, Brian called.
Right.
So it was just like, this is the complete first complete band on Playlist Parlay.
That's something to be proud of, right?
It is, man.
And who would have thought?
I wouldn't have thought it would be Otra.
Right.
And that was a lot of fun, man.
Yeah, it was.
I played Respect on the River. It's a little music festival in Knights Ferry, just outside of Oakdale. Mm-hmm. And I started playing and it was light, and by the time we were done, I was playing with Grover. And the show ends, and we get up and take our bows, and somebody in the audience is going, "Otra!" Oh, it was so weird.
Yeah,
and I never figured out who it was.
Sounded like a caveman.
Yeah, and I was like, "Well, cool." I mean, somebody recognized me from a band from a minute ago, but that was really fun.
Well, we actually played the Murphys area. We played in front of quite a few people during that period. I think.
We did.
Like the Murphys Theater, we had a really good show.
Yeah.
We played at the hotel. I mean, we were getting out there, and good band. Otra, as kind of the caveman word for fire, and we were on fire a lot.
Yeah, I had a lot of fun, and the three of us we've all stayed friends with each other. We don't play together very often, right. Any of the three of us, as much as.
Sure, but that could change. You never know.
That's true. It could change. And I mean, I see Brian all the time, and I don't see you as often lately, but this last 6 months or so, we've run into each other quite a bit more than we probably have in the last 4 or 5 years.
Sure. It's mostly me not getting out as much as I used
COVID.
to. COVID
puts a cramp on all that.
I tell people that COVID kind of made me a social nincompoop, because I got used to just being at home and all that. I was working the whole time. I was an essential employee, doing important work for PG&E, but one of my bands that I was well known for, we kind of disbanded in 2019, right before the COVID. So I wasn't, there was nobody who was actively playing music at that time.
Yeah, there was just no gigs
went dead.
Really.
So I'm trying to get back out there, inspired by your show and just wanting to be more active with all these great people that we have in the local community. And I think the show's awesome. So I'm looking forward to the.
Well, thanks, Guy. I appreciate it. So. And I can't wait for you to get back out playing again too, man. It's your style of guitar playing and soloing in particular, I think, is really unique, sounding just unto yourself. I mean, I think Sky Kaufman has a unique sound.
Thank you.
And I know you've developed that and worked at that, but I think it comes from tonal choices and just you being a creative guy. You take a lot of influence you listen to a lot of different kinds of music, you internalize what these guys are mechanically doing and sonically doing, and then you don't sort of regurgitate it. You run it through the Sky filter and put it back out into the world with your own sound. And I've always loved that about your style and your creativity in every band I've seen you with or played with you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I feel like, I definitely emulated some of my favorite players, but, one of the things that I always tried to do is be diverse when it came to guitar playing. And I do like to be spontaneous as well. I kind of go through phases. I mean, when I'm playing all the time, I take it for granted, and then when I'm not playing, I yearn for it, and I've kind of been, not playing actively, although I've been sitting in with people lately, and I'm kind of getting that fire reignited. So watch out. I do have some ideas in the works for projects, and we'll see what comes out of those. So
cool, man. I'm excited to see whatever ends up happening with you.
Yeah. Thank you.
So let's go back to you starting to play. You told me, we talked a little bit before the cameras or the tape was rolling here, and you said you originally wanted to be a drummer.
Yeah.
So tell me, what age was all this?
Okay, so when I was probably in 5th grade, I lived in Twain Harte with my mom, and I started, taking some drum lessons at the school and got a pad and some drumsticks. But my mom also had a boyfriend that had a set of drums at our house.
Oh, cool.
And when he wasn't around, I would hop on those things, and he had, kind of a stereo set up next to it, and I would put on Steve Miller and try to play along with that, and it was really just fun,
Yeah.
I'm sure I didn't sound very good, but I was having fun doing it.
But you were learning. You were learning music.
And I would watch him, and so yeah, I kind of wanted to be a drummer, and but I didn't really have any real aspirations to pursue it or anything like that. So I was in 5th grade in Twain, but I used to live in Texas, and I'd kind of move back and forth between my grandma's and my mom's here. So, and my mom ended up, in the future, she ended up dating a guy named Tim Armerkost, and he was a local musician. He played in fiddlesticks originally.
Okay.
He was kind of like a bluegrass musician, but he moved out here from Boston, and he worked at Cole Music. Okay.
Okay.
And so when I lived in Texas, I'd come back here in the summertime, and I had to be about 15. But I do want to say this: I did get my first guitar at 5. And I took lessons from some stinky, grungy old man, and I didn't last long because it hurt my fingers, and I just was 5 years old. So it didn't really do anything for me. By the time I was 15, though, I was really good at playing guitar on my tennis racket, because that's what I would do in front of the mirror. And I'd always loved music. So if there's a piano around, any kind of musical instrument, I was always messing with it. But I never thought to myself, like, I need to play this, or I just would do it. I was an artist. My mom was an artist. So anyway, I basically, when I became 15, I came out here, and Tim, I mess around. He had all these instruments, and he let me mess around with these instruments. And he had a thing called a bouzouki. It's like they use it in like Greek music and stuff like that. And for some reason, I picked that thing up and messed around with it. And he started noticing that, like, I had some kind of gift to make some
proficiency,
music.
yeah.
So I actually learned how to play Hotel California on that during that summer. And by the end of the summer, he actually bought me a guitar and an amp. And that was my first guitar and amp. And it was like a Explorer style and a little amp, probably like an 8-inch speaker. And I went back to Texas, and I started there. And my grandma, she was actually pretty cool grandma. She let me listen to Judas Priest on the way to church, and I listened to all kinds of different music. I also listened to her music. I loved Glenn Campbell and Johnny Cash and all these kind of country artists. Is where I first, when my first concert was like the Oak Ridge Boys.
Cool,
right? So anyway, so I'm in Texas, and I played football. Well, then I started really liking this guitar thing, and next thing you know, I'm not doing my homework. I'm just noodling on my guitar, right? And so,
like most good guitar students should be doing, is blowing off homework to play guitar.
So then, I'll never forget this, and I don't realize that they understood how this was going to affect me. So I got kicked off the football team because of my grades. If you didn't pass, you didn't play. And then, basically they took my guitar away from me for a month as punishment. Really upset me. And I didn't realize how much I loved it until they took it away from me. So when I got that guitar back, I was never going to let anybody take that from me again. So I ended up moving back to California, and Pat Sieben was doing a beginning guitar class, and I was a junior. And
and this is at Sonora High School now?
Yeah, Sonora High School, yes.
Okay.
I thought it was cool, like, wow, they have a guitar class. It's called Beginning Guitar. So Tim bought me a guitar, an amp, and a Mel Bay first grade book that had chords and, like, a couple scales. That was it, right? And after a year, I just started learning the pentatonic scale. But I do have to mention something. When I lived in Texas, there was this guy, John Griffin, that introduced me to Stevie Ray Vaughan. And, I was already familiar with Jimi Hendrix. My cousin had a huge record collection. And I was into Beatles and Zeppelin and the Funkadelics and all that kind of stuff. I was,
Sure.
But when I got out here, I got in the beginning guitar class. It was the first day for me. And, there's these other kids that had already been in there for a bit because it was like halfway through the year. And, they had long hair and I had short hair. I was kind of like I was confused. I was like a preppy jock. Didn't really know what I was, So I'm in the class and they, oh, so what can you play? I'm like, I played a couple chords and, there's a few songs that I knew, like the Mission Impossible theme or just kind of some weird stuff,
Yeah, just stuff you pick up when you were a kid, right?
So they pretty much, I tried to play the pentatonic scale and they laughed at me. It was pretty ridiculous, So that kind of lit a fire under me that day because I was like, okay, well, I wasn't expecting to get laughed at because that's not why I took the class or whatever. But I'm like, if those kids can do it, so can I. And what happened was I didn't have a bunch of friends. I didn't have a girlfriend. I literally holed up in my room for the next year and a half. And when I was a senior in high school, my birthday's in March, and they were having this guitar contest at Daddy-O's. It was a local place for the youth.
I don't remember that.
Yeah. Anyway, so this is a monumental thing for me. So I had already some of those kids that were in beginning guitar class. I ended up hanging out with them, and they turned me on to music. I would go over their house, and so if I wasn't in my bedroom playing guitar, I was over at their house playing guitar. So I just kept playing and playing and playing, practicing and practicing and practicing, listening to music. I took some lessons at Cole Music from Dave Friedman.
Okay.
And then Mark Gosney, who's in Hired Gun.
Right.
Okay. And also worked with one of your guys, Billy Cook.
Yeah, Billy.
So I entered this guitar contest because it was the thing. It was like, yeah, it's at Daddy-O's. I mean, nobody's heard of it really.
So you're like what, high school class in 91?
90.
90.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. So I was like, okay. And what happened was I had woodshedded hard. Okay. And they had all these different books, like Guitar for the Practicing Musician, tablature. That's what I got into. They also had these videos like with Paul Gilbert, like the Star series, and just all these different things. And I just absorbed everything I could. And so I actually entered the contest and won that guitar contest.
Nice.
A year later, after getting laughed at, basically. And I actually did part of the Crossroads thing that Steve Vai did.
Right.
I did that at the end.
Okay.
And won.
Wow.
And it was a weird thing because there were some good guitar players, and I wasn't expecting to win. I just thought it was kind of cool. I wanted to do it, I practiced a lot. I did all kinds of stuff. I did Yngwie Malmsteen. I did Stevie Ray Vaughan. I did a lot of different things, But I planned, I'm like, I'm going to do some of that Crossroads thing and see what happens. Did I nail it? Probably not, but I did it good enough where I won it,
Sure.
And it's funny because I had short hair, and then I'll never forget at the end after I won, and like the judges were praising me and like, oh, you're awesome, and we're so glad that you entered this contest, and we know about you now. So, and well, everybody was calling me a poser as I was leaving because I had short hair, right? And I'm like, well, I just beat all these guys with long hair, but so that's what kind of got me on the map locally, was winning this guitar contest. And I was a senior in high school, and then literally like when I was 19, I was already starting to play in bars.
Yeah, I know the story.
In local bands, and I got hooked up. I was going to Columbia College. I had hooked up with a couple guys there, and basically got my first local band I got into was Happen Chance.
Okay.
I met this guy, Josh Phillips, who's one of my favorite people on the planet. We go way back, and his mom worked at the Iron Door. He met me at Cole Music. He saw me. I was in the back noodling around on Somewhere Over the Rainbow playing at Blues Style, and he goes, hey, that's pretty cool. What's your name? And then, well, he ended up getting a job in Colorado, and he's like, hey, you should get this guy Sky to be in the band. he's pretty good, and I happened to see these guys at a party. There was like a Halloween party.
Okay.
And this party's really pivotal to me. There's a lot of people that ended up being in my life musically after that. But so yeah, they got a hold of me. I played in the band. It was called Ludicrous Headspin. Okay.
Okay.
My first gig was at Big Oak Flat, and I was wearing pants so tight I could not even breathe. And people left, and we just played for the bartender and the owner. Right. That was my first gig. And then Josh ended up coming back. We were still Ludicrous Headspin. But the singer, and the singer actually had a big influence on me, like musically too. He was he was older. He, kind of knew what he was doing. He had the PA. He was booking gigs and was doing a lot of good positive things, and he was kind of mentoring me. But ultimately, he was a little overbearing for us, and we decided we would move on. And so then we created a band called the Psychedelics, and we were playing at the Iron Door on Thursday nights. And that's really when I started, playing live a lot. We're playing cover songs. We did everything from ZZ Top to Jane's Addiction. I would do Voodoo Child. Josh would do Stranglehold. We had a friendly competition going on. It was great. It was I love that about Josh. I got to relive it recently because he came up from LA with this band called Love Weapon. But ultimately, so then after that. I kind of just played in that band. Josh ended up moving back to Colorado. The band kind of fell apart. Oops. And then, after that, there's a period of time where I was not really playing with anybody. And I get a call from this guy. He's like, hey, I found your number on the board down at Cole Music. He said, I just bought a drum set. You want to hook up? I'm like, yeah, when? He's like, right now. I'm like, okay, sure. I live right up the road. So he comes up and he just bought this brand new Tom and drum kit. His name is Chris, and he's setting it up, and he's like, you know any Led Zeppelin? I'm like, nah, I don't. Don't really like them, Like, you know any Jimi Hendrix? He's like, nah. We're like kind of looking at each other like, what are we doing here? And then some reason we're like, you know any Iron Maiden? Yeah, I know the Trooper. Okay, well, so then we just started doing that. Well, so Chris, he ended up being one of my best friends, and me and him were just always playing together. That was my first musical relationship with a drummer.
So this is like 92, 93 era?
It was, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it was right around there. I was probably 19, 20.
Makes sense.
He was playing in the band, though. Sorry, I guess it was before that. I got a little mixed up here. I met him before I was in the Psychedelics.
Okay.
Sorry, I got that backwards. He had called me before that. It was Ludicrous Headspin. He filled in for the drummer there at that party.
Okay.
Then I played in the band with him for a little bit as Ludicrous Headspin. But then then it was Josh. And so Josh and Chris were in that band, and a guy named Chris Mortensen. Sorry, I'm kind of getting a little mixed up here.
That's a long time ago.
Yeah, it's a long time ago.
It's interesting, like to hear you talk, because I moved here in 92, and Cole Music was just getting to the end.
Yeah.
Things were kind of falling apart. There was
Sure.
some financial problems and some other stuff going on.
Yeah, they moved from downtown with a bigger store. They moved down to Stockton.
Right.
Kind of downsized, yeah.
But it's just interesting to me that, like, a lot of the guys that I've played with, like, coming up here were much older than you. And I think back to the 80s where Cole Music was sort of the center of the universe.
It was, yeah.
But I just didn't realize that it was still that much of a center of the universe into the 90s. To hear you talk about how a number at Cole Music, and I was taking lessons here. And
well, I actually worked there, too. I worked
there.
Dave Kavanaugh would let me work there, and I would... work the cash register and clean the guitars, and so I kind of worked with them too. But yeah, Cole Music, it was kind of, on its way out, but it was still, I still respected it, and it was still the place where you could go in and get good instruments, and
right.
in some cases vintage instruments. Dave Kavanaugh and Richard Scholler. I love those guys. They're really important in my life because they gave me a certain amount of trust to work there.
Sure.
But I also was influenced by everything they did musically because they used to play with Tim, my stepdad. So, but yeah, so after I got in my first couple bands, probably I got in this. Cliff Moyle was the local guy. He was a singer. He was in Ludacris Headspin, and then we kind of got rid of him. And then I ended up back with him when Josh moved away. Then we had a couple. It's been so long ago, like even when I sent you the list of all the bands, like I'd kind of forgotten some, right?
Sure.
But Skin Gypsies was one of the bands that I was in with Cliff, and Chris was in there. And then we had Mike Tarango, who ended up being the singer for Bison.
Right.
So, we played a lot of shows. I was playing like Montrose and doing, Black Crows, and we were doing Stones, and I started, kind of doing my Red House and Voodoo Child stuff that I like to do, Steve Ray Vaughan stuff, and basically just, playing local venues, Bill Sports Bar, Steve's Place, just all the local places. And
the old Brass Rail. You guys were playing there?
Oh yeah. So basically, I was playing before I was 21 in some of those places, and I would either stand outside or just try not to cause any problems. If I was hanging out. The Iron Door though is really probably the place where I really cut my teeth with Josh and that friendly competition we had. That's what pushed me to another level with my guitar playing, having that kind of inspiration, honestly, because I really respected Josh, and he was a good player, and he thought the same about me, and he was trying to one up me, and I was trying to one up him a little bit, but
there's an interesting dynamic with all of us in our instruments between where we have this subtle competition. Like you got to be competitive and kind of have be a little bit hungry to get good, and at the same time not be so egomaniacal about it that you can't be cooperative.
Sure.
And it sounds like you had a really great lesson in that early on, where you had a friendly competition, a cooperative competition to get better. That's probably why you're so darn good, man, is because you just had someone pushing you who was invested in you getting better.
Well, he respected me from the first day he met me, and I respected him. And that was, how can I say it? Like, sometimes you get two guys with egos on the stage, and it's not a good thing,
Right.
But, we respected each other enough where, because, we would give each other the spotlight. We knew when it was like, okay, Josh, go for it, bro. I got your back on this. And I would play rhythm, and it was good. It was really good to be able to switch hats like that between each other. And I still love that guy to this day. He was kind of the front man as well, singing and doing all that. So that inspired me to do some of that. I wasn't as good. I've always just really been a guitar player,
Right.
And when I sing, it's sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not so good, But I will say this, that I enjoy having, even if it's with a drummer, a friendly competition, right?
Sure.
Where the drummer's like, oh, look what I can do. Oh yeah, well check this out, And then when you lock up on stuff together, it's the best feeling. And I've done that with you before in Otra, and I love that. That chemistry that you have together.
Right.
Well, part of that's a friendly competition, and it pushes you to be better because you want to be better, because the drummer's getting better, so are you, right? You want to keep up, but you want to be on the same path. So yeah, that was kind of where I got my introduction to bands. But there was a time too where after I was in Skin Gypsies and all that, there was another period where it went back to me and Chris, the drummer, just doing our thing. Okay, waiting to see what was going to happen. And, we had already met Mike. He was singing with Autumn's Garden, going to school down there, but he was also playing bass with us in Skin Gypsies. Well, then when we disbanded, me and Chris were still hooking up. And I ended up being a guy named Jim McDonald. And he I knew of Greg Knoll, you know, because he was like a local legend, right?
Right, this is after all the villain days already for him, so he already had his celebrity status.
He did. Yes, absolutely. And you know, so I knew of him, and I'd heard about him, and then Jim was playing in a band with him, Toys, and they were doing like a jam night up at Epperson House.
Okay.
So me and Chris would go up there, and they would let us sit in with them, you know, and they liked us both. We would sit in with them, and it was cool that they actually kind of took us under our wing. And I'm watching Greg. I'm like, wow, he's really good. You know, doing Rocky Mountain Way. I mean, it was awesome. You know, they ended up doing a Megadeth song. It was great. You know, like just solid players that could learn stuff. And Jim was playing guitar more than back then. He was singing. And we kind of ended up being almost kind of like members of Toys. That's how often we played with them.
Wow.
And you know, I got to play with Greg on a more regular basis, and that had a huge influence on me because I could tell how much further along he was than I was. Now, we were different though. I mean, I could play fast. I could play Yngwie Malmsteen. I could do some Steve Vai stuff. Like, you know, I had some tricks up my sleeve. But he was like into Dimebag Darrell from Pantera.
Right.
And he was, you know, into these other players. And, you know, so it was cool. Once again, there was a friendly competition between us. Greg and I, at that time, got along really well. And I think, you know, for him to kind of allow Jim to bring me into the mix and him be, you know, kind of accepting to that speaks a lot to Greg and how he embraced my talent. Instead of seeing it as like a competition to replace him or whatever it was. It wasn't like that. So it was fun. One of my best memories is running around Avery Ranch. We both had wirelesses, and we were running around playing Freebird solo for like, you know, I don't know, it had to be like 4 or 5 minutes, you know. But yeah, I got to play with Greg Knoll, and Jim McDonald was a huge part of that. And then, you know, that kind of kept me and Chris active musically.
Okay.
And besides what we were doing, like, we literally just sit up on his porch and just jam, you know, Zeppelin for days or whatever, you know, we felt like. But I started writing original music, okay? And then we're like, hey, Mike, you know, because he was playing bass with me, you want to play some of this music with us? And we were literally just playing instrumental versions of some of Bison songs, right? Like Drop Doom, Fist Fightin'. I wrote Head in a Jar. It was kind of like a Spanish tune, but it didn't have a name.
Right.
Drop Doom became, I called it that because it was in drop D, and it sounded heavy, right?
Okay, sure.
So we're doing this kind of whenever we could, just getting together, playing this instrumental music, and like at a party or whatever, you know, not thinking a whole lot about it, and well, that being important because that led to Bison. And how Bison basically came about is Jeff Jones, who was to me, like a local, he played with Clan Dyken, he played bass, and we became friends. At one point I thought he was the Edge one day at Cold Music and stuff, and Dave Kaufman just laughed at me, right? Anyway, but he came to me, he used to running the music at Kitey Creek back in the day, which was a pretty healthy music scene at the time locally. Started out on Mondays and it grew from there. And they were doing their first Kitey Creek Festival. And so he wanted me and Chris to play with him and Laura Dyken. And we agreed. It was kind of it was more out of Chris's comfort zone than mine because I was more diverse than him, you know. But he did it, and we ended up learning original songs. We played, and the bass player guy's name was Brian Jerka.
Right.
And so, literally, by the end of the first rehearsal, me and Chris were already like, "Wow, this guy's pretty good." We kind of like him, you know. We went outside, we're on the deck, you know, talking about him, and we're like, "Well, how do we?" Well, Mikey's just singing with Autumn's Garden. Maybe we can get him to sing for us.
Right.
Because we didn't want to get rid of Mikey. We just wanted Brian to play bass with us. And so we approached Mike and said, look, we met this really good bass player guy. He's a really cool guy. Would you be willing to sing? And we could do those original songs. And he said yes.
Cool.
So he was going to college at the time, and he'd already been writing stuff down on notepads.
Right.
And he already had lyrics for some of this stuff. So he came up with lyrics.
So Bison was the four of you. It was Chris, you, Brian, and Mike.
Yes,
okay.
That's right. So that's Bison. That was my first notable project that really got me even more kind of cemented into the local music scene here.
So Brian told a story about how Electric Zowie was Bison for a minute, and then
it was okay. And I heard that conversation, and how that went down with us is we were trying to come up with a name, and Brian's like, well, there's a, I do kind of have a name that I might be able to use, but I got to talk to someone first. I got to make sure it's cool, and that was Kevin,
right,
and Matt Lee, I believe, right.
Yeah, Benito and Matt Lee.
Yeah.
Right.
So, and the thing is when he said it was Bison, well, all I could think of was like this lyric by the Chili Peppers, "The Big Bad Bison," and I'm like, I like Bison. That sounds good, Bison. Yeah, and just kind of the symbolism of bison and buffalo and all that.
Sure.
I like that. And we all did. So he talked to Kevin. Next thing you know, we're Bison. And we really started, we had some cover songs, but really the inception was the original music that we started writing together. And it was cool to have Mikey go from being the bass player to actually writing the lyrics and becoming the front man of the band. And then Brian coming in and basically changing up all the bass parts because that's not how Brian plays, right?
Sure.
Mike was more or less copying me on some of the stuff, and but yeah, that was what led to Bison, and we did a lot locally here, and that's the band that I try to become, a rock star with, basically. So
sure, and I think that's the first time I don't think I met you, but the first time I ever saw you is about the time I'm either a senior or thereabouts. So this is like 96, 97.
Okay.
About.
We put our album out in 96.
Okay. Maybe it was a little earlier. Maybe I was only about 16.
Okay.
Cruising around the 21 clubs. But
sure,
whatever.
Yeah, you could do that.
But you could back in the day. I mean,
yeah.
And I wasn't going trying to drink underage drink. I was going to see the band.
Sure, yeah.
And
as long as you're cool with stuff.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well, this is before the PlayStation was right where it is now.
Well, sure, yeah, absolutely. Although they were down there. They were down there. Present, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, and I remember seeing Coyote Creek was a big deal.
It was.
Like one of probably the biggest deals of a music thing in Sonora in my lifetime.
Absolutely.
There was so much culture that was happening there, and
yes,
it was
that word is important, culture, because it was different from some of the other stuff that was happening, the types of bands that they're having. Although they had some of the local bands come through there, they were also, Jeff had some connections to get some of these bands from out of the area.
Yeah, a lot of Santa Cruz bands and LA bands that were going up north.
One of my favorite bands ever, the Glue Brothers. I saw them for the first time at Coyote Creek and just absolutely was blown away by these guys, But yeah, it was a great music scene. I wanted to be a part of it. I had to be a part of it. Somehow, some way. How was I going to be a part of that,
Yeah.
But yeah, Coyote Creek and Jeff Jones. I mean, Jeff Jones was basically the guy that introduced me to Brian, and the rest is history, so to speak. And
sure,
Jeff's still a really important part of my life to this day. He's, I love that guy. So
yeah, and it also can just kind of shows. I mean, eventually I'll either get Mark or Bear to come on. I hope.
Sure, absolutely.
But how much Clan Dyken?
Sure.
Really has been instrumental to so much of the rest of the music scene.
Sure, they were the band around here that was doing solar shows and running their whole sound, and they had a big following, like a local version of the Grateful Dead almost, and they had some good music too. I told Bear at the Sierra Bigfoot Festival how much I love the song Spirit Trail, and I wanted to remind him of how much I love that song, because you need to hear that as an artist, right? Because
sometimes
you look at your songs differently. Sometimes you move on, but that song becomes cemented in somebody else's life, So it's good. I think Bear would be a great interview, or Mark. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think I have got a good enough relationship with both of those guys that either of them would probably come on, and
Absolutely.
I'd reach out. I think they'd both be really interesting interviews, and they're great guys.
Yes.
Bear's one of those guys that surprises me whenever because he just sings my high praises, and it's weird because I've never really played with him. He's just seen me play a few times, and he just always has the nicest things to say, and I really appreciate that. I mean, we all like having our ego stroked. I mean, that's not a surprise to anyone, but it's credible coming from Bear.
Well, sure, but it's not. Sometimes you need to hear appreciation.
Sure,
because you need to hear that from someone, because you might be. I underestimate. I try to be a humble player. I think you are a humble player too.
I try.
Right? I don't sit there and go, "Oh, I'm the best guitar player around." I don't think that way. Just because I won a guitar contest when I was like 18 years old, that doesn't really mean anything. What I think counts is I put in the time.
Right.
I not only did I woodshed to win the contest, but I also had to get in a band, succeed, fail, have embarrassing moments on the stage, have equipment fail, booking shows, get to the show, do the show, break down after the show. Like, there was a lot more to it than I even thought about.
Yeah. There's a whole lifestyle to this whole thing.
It is.
And a lot of it, I think that, you just have to do it to understand it. You can't even explain it to somebody. Even girlfriends of the past that like hang around for a while and see some of that. I would bet even Monique now. She's seen this. You guys have been married for a while. She
was actually really good with helping and doing all kinds of stuff. She would even take care of the band as much as she could.
She's a motherly kind of figure, which is fantastic.
She's an awesome woman, and she totally supported me in music the whole entire time. Even because there was actually a long period where I was not playing music.
Yeah.
And I was basically just working. I go through phases of that because I have a day job. And sometimes that has to be more important. But ultimately, what I do best in life is I play guitar. And that's what makes me feel the best. And I think, I would like to encourage any kid that's 15 or younger or what, embrace it.
Yeah.
You want to do it, just do it.
Well, it's interesting. I in the last week or so, I find myself when I do like these interviews, like my life tends to like have a weird setup for the show. Like, I knew I was talking to you, and earlier this week, completely unrelated, I had this conversation about how music is a conversation. When we play together, it should be as easy as the English conversation we're having now.
Sure.
And I play something, and I'm asking for a response musically. And you're one of those players that I really feel that way with. And that's the proficiency we want to get to as musicians.
Sure.
You want to get away from the chart and this is the right chord and this is the right note and not so much that, but just listen to what the other player played. And in that, there's a question. There's an implied response. And your response can be a myriad of different things. Mm-hmm. But to know how to respond musically, and that's what makes good music. That's why these guys that are recording artists and studio players are so good, because all they do is Monday through Friday, their 9 to 5, is to just sit down and be like having a conversation. It's like having like a morning show, like Bob and Tom or something in the morning. Yeah. Those guys get up every morning, have different guests, and they just are funny. They just have these conversations.
It's their daily routine. It's just what they do.
But it's so like as brilliant as some of that stuff turns out to be, they're just talking. They're thinking like, I have the easiest job in the world because I just do this every day.
Sure, and they love it.
Right. And as musicians, that's the thing. It really is about just getting the reps in.
Sure.
And
I think doing it with the right people is very important, because you want to do it more. You want to do it better. You want to kind of walk that path with them, you know. I think it's a special thing to meet people that you have good chemistry with. And, you know, we've all been in bands where we maybe haven't had that chemistry and it didn't work out, right?
Sure.
You live and learn, right? You know, it's not always going to work out, but, you know, the times when you get along with somebody, it's real special. The music also is very special. And to me, my favorite thing about playing music is live music. And
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
having that interaction.
Because lightning in a bottle
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah. Having that interaction not only with the musicians on stage, but then the crowd feeds off of it. And the next thing you're feeding off the crowd. There's nothing like that on the planet. I love that. It's my favorite thing to see that happen, to see that connection, that energy, that it's like
when people just start
spark.
spontaneously dancing, and it's me, it's us. It's like the us, me and my two buddies or three guys, and we're doing this, and it's inspiring people to move their bodies in a way that's, you know, it's a powerful thing. Music's just a very powerful thing.
And I'm not just a musician, I'm a fan of music. So I still have that part of me that, you know, there's bands that I listen to. I don't try to play it. I don't try to emulate it. I just love listening to them because I love their music. And it makes me have a better day when I listen to it, you know.
Sure, man. Well, that brings us to a good segue into the band we're talking about. And again, the chemistry that you and I have as musician friends, as a musician's friendship, you brought me a band that was completely off of my radar. I'd never heard the name of this band. I might have heard some of these songs on the radio and just not been in touch with, like, identifying them. But the band you brought is Big Wreck.
That's right.
And I can honestly say that I have had no association. But, man, this is great. And this is kind of what the show's all about, is for us to learn how to make discoveries and then listen to them with big ears, you know, big ears, and understand, like, what are these guys doing? Why is this interesting? It's not necessarily good because I like the lyrics, or it's not necessarily good just because it fits into a genre that I already like. Like, I like country, so I'll just like all country, or I like hip hop, so I like all hip hop.
Right.
No, like, I want to, like, listen to something with a little more depth. And this band's got it's just rich with depth of musicianship, from the lyrics to the vocal performance, and a couple of different drummers through the years, but all really good, well-produced recordings. Lots of interesting, just stylistic things through this band's catalog. I really enjoyed this because this is the first time on the show the second time, Poco, with Fred, I really had to dig into something like, this is new. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going to dig in and enjoy it.
That's actually kind of what inspired me. I want to give him credit because I listened to that show, and I know that we originally talked about doing someone else.
Right.
And then, you know, you ended up doing that artist, and I was okay with that. That's fine. But I was like, who am I going to pick? Am I going to pick someone that everybody can relate to or has heard, or is there a band that I want to that really I love, and I want to maybe get them out to the world? So, because I'd never heard of Poco before,
right?
And so I listened to that, and then I listened to them, and I was like, okay, I see, and I think that's one of the kind of nuggets that can happen with this show, or being a musician, or having friends that turn you on to a band that you haven't heard of, even though they've been around for 20 or 30 years, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, so, yeah, there's a lot of music, and, you know, Big Wreck is the band I picked, and I think ultimately there's a lot of great music that they have, and it blows my mind that more people don't know about them. And my story with Big Wreck is I heard this song on the radio. I really liked it, but I never heard who the artist was. I didn't even know what the name of the song was for a long time, but I really liked it. Back in the day you had radio, you know, so you had to hear who the artist was or hear the song. And that was back in like late 90s, okay? And I'm like, man, who is that? But it wasn't until basically 2020 that I really discovered who Big Rec was.
Right.
So we're talking 20 years or more before I
dove in.
dove
to speak.
in,
Yeah.
like, you know, hard on COVID, right? It's like, okay, I'm watching YouTube. And then my wife, Monique, actually dove in harder with them. She really liked Big Rec. One of her favorite songs, she just played it over and over and over again. You know, that's how much she liked it. But I felt like I was discovering something that I should have discovered a long time ago.
That's kind of how I feel now that you've shown them
Yeah.
to me. Like, this should be, I mean, there's so much musicality here that anyone who's playing, whether it's like heavier, almost metal, or even if you're doing the metal thing, all the way to like pop rock cover or hard rock cover, like these guys have elements that you could be taking pieces of and incorporating into your playing.
And I have a little bit.
Yeah.
You know, but they're doing it in a way that's legitimate. Like, it's not like they're trying to do a certain style just to
nothing
do
feels
it.
forced.
Yeah, it's not forced. It's, you know, their approach is, the band started out at Berklee School of Music in Boston.
So they're probably pretty good.
And let's talk about Ian Fletcher Thornley, who's he ended up becoming the singer of the band because they couldn't find a singer. He was a guitar player, you know,
Right.
and you know, was going to the Berklee School of Music and kept getting shifted around between his dorm rooms, I found out, because he was playing his guitar late at night, making a bunch of noise, and ended up having this band with these other guys. And they formed in 92, and I don't think they put their first album out till 97. But Ian Fletcher Thornley is an incredible musician and inspires me in a way that I haven't been inspired by since players like Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix and Joe Satriani. Another guy I love is Eric Gales.
Yeah.
You know, but this guy really inspired me. I'm just like, wow. He just kept blowing my mind. Everything, his tone, his choice of notes, the way he approached the guitar, how tight he was.
That's what my biggest takeaway from him
Yes.
as a player.
Yeah.
He's so clean.
Yes.
Like every lick, I mean, you look at Eddie Van Halen, who's a shredder and all this other stuff, but, you know, Marshall and I even pointed out when we did the episode that one take to the next take wasn't the same. You know, it's like there's a little bit of slop
Sure.
there. There's a little bit of variance and how, but this guy, I don't know if it's a production thing or he's always that clean live. I haven't watched enough of the live stuff to have comparison. I've seen some of you sent me some links, but
yeah, right.
I haven't watched a series of them just to see.
you hadn't had enough time to absorb it all.
Right.
I'm sure, yeah.
But there are some things that he's doing that are very, very technically difficult.
Yes.
And they're executed so cleanly.
Yes, absolutely.
A lot of hammer-on stuff where there's no pull-off sound, and like he's just got really good technique, it seems like.
And control. He controls it very well. You know, it's like he does slide excellent. Like he can shred, but he also can sound like Stevie Ray Vaughan when he wants to. He can he has a lot of soul. He has a lot of feel. It's coming from the heart. And that's what I love about him best. What I pick up on is like he is singing through his guitar, even though he's a great singer and sounds a lot like Chris Cornell.
Yeah.
When he sings.
Vocally, I agree.
You know, and honestly, they actually were going to try to bring him into the mix in Soundgarden after Chris Cornell passed away, but he refused to not put his guitar down. Right. So,
Right.
You know, which doesn't really make sense to me, but, you know.
You know, I mean, that's maybe part of the reason it ties into why we don't, this band isn't on our radar.
So why do you think that? Because I think, to me, when you have a band this good, it's like, why aren't they more...
It's got to be marketing. It's got to be.
Yeah.
Like, I just think that they didn't have any music videos on MTV or VH1 for the 90s.
Sure.
That's how the high school was exposed to a lot of bands.
Yep.
And I don't think these guys hadn't made a music video.
Yeah.
Or if they did, I don't remember it. And I watched a lot of VH1 and MTV back in the day.
Yeah.
That was sort of my outlet to get new stuff. That's where I learned.
Yeah.
Like the new stuff. Because radio just wasn't as engaging, I think. I mean, new stuff was on the radio, but you didn't get to see their faces. You didn't get to see the creative little... Like, music videos were a really neat idea. Absolutely. I kind of wish they were still around.
Yeah, me too.
Like, I think music videos were really cool, and I think now it's because of the streaming platforms. I think because music videos were to sell records. Yeah. And now you don't sell records. Now you make a record so you have a reason to go on tour and you make all your money from the tour.
Yeah, the music industry's changed a lot. You know? And let's face it, television changed a lot too, and they don't even do music anymore. You know? So, but yeah, that was I was trying to do a little bit of research on it. You know, Ian is from Canada, right? But all the other members were from America.
Okay.
So you know, they were rooted in Boston, started in Boston. They were touring, doing all that stuff. And they didn't really kind of get any kind of progress in their career until they went back to Canada. And then they started, you know, making some progress. And that's kind of interesting to me, you know. That for some reason, when they were over here, they didn't gain any traction, but they gained traction over in Canada. You know, but are they going to gain traction with the American audience, which is a pretty important audience to have? You know, why didn't they gain traction with the American? Because I don't see any reason why.
Well, I think it's the same puzzle as Poco.
Yeah.
I mean, Poco, it sounds like Linda Ronstadt, the Eagles, Buffalo Springfield, all mixed together. These are good bands.
Yeah, right.
And Poco's a great band.
Sure.
And this is a great band, but it sounds a lot like Soundgarden, Stone Temple Pilots, a little bit of Dave Matthews, a little bit of like Metallica, but weird Metallica, but you know, I mean, some of the heavy stuff.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of like these 90s elements, late 80s, early 90s elements into the music, but maybe the timing didn't work out, or they sounded too much like somebody else who was already kind of filling that musical niche.
You know,
I don't know.
See, my recollection of hearing the Oath, which is that's a song that hooked me on it. You know, it kind of sounded like a Who song a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah, that intro is really cool.
The intro, but it was guitar, and I'm like, wow, how's he doing that? You know, and he was in a different tuning, and he had a certain effect on it, and it really grabbed me, you know. And at the time, it was different from some of the music that was happening at that time,
right?
Which we were being it was kind of being pushed on us, right? It was post grunge. But there was that awkward period of time, and I'll use this as an example, like where Metallica did, like, you know, Load and Reload, like totally just went off the Metallica path, and you know, so it was, you know, maybe that was a good thing, I don't know, but I don't think there's anything wrong with the band doing what they think they need to do, but I don't think Big Wreck. I think you're right. Marketing might have been a big factor in that, and you know, why wasn't I hearing their name after they played the Oath? How come I didn't know who the band was?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm aware of who Sister Hazel is from the one hit they had.
Sure,
you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, and Toad the Wet Sprocket, and there's a lot of these '90s bands that sound like this band. Yeah. But for whatever reason, and these guys have a you know, I mean, it was very easy to pick 10 songs.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of good material here, but I also think that it's a little bit telling, maybe, that we have a lot of crossovers between our two lists that we did independently. Sure. So, on the one hand, I think I found that there was a lot of depth, but I still think we both gravitated toward a lot of the same tunes as the standout ones. Yeah. And maybe that's also part of the problem, is that they weren't diverse enough, or the other, like the B-side stuff just didn't hit. Only the hits hit, but the B-side stuff didn't.
I don't know.
At least with the market. I mean, it hits with me, but maybe the market at the time didn't.
See, you know, when I was doing the top 10 list, some of the depth they have, I didn't put on the list, but it's some of my favorite stuff they do. And I'm not sure exactly why I did that, because I didn't think I wanted to do that, okay? I there's nothing wrong with saying, hey, this deep cut here, you really need to hear this cut, right?
Sure.
I think the closest one to that for me was overemphasizing that song.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have some great stuff, and it is diverse, I think. They have some songs that sound like 80s songs. They have some songs that sound kind of like heavy, you know, like we're talking as heavy as Tool.
Yeah.
they have some stuff that's as heavy as Metallica, but it's not James Hetfield singing it because he always has melody.
Right.
He's got that approach of I'm singing melodies. He definitely screams sometimes, but it's still melodic too.
But he's also got like that controlled falsetto thing like Dave Matthews does.
Yes. And I always love that.
Right. Well, let's dig in.
All right.
So I'll go with my number 10 first, which is one of those heavier tunes.
Okay.
I picked Bombs Away as the
that's
first
a great one.
And I picked it because I was looking for like diversity in their sound. And so it made it to my number 10 spot because it is heavy. It's kind of like Tool or Metallica, but it's kind of like Tool or Metallica over top of like Dave Matthews Band or U2. Like the drums and the bass aren't heavy. It's just the guitar that's really heavy.
And that guitar part is really cool.
It's really cool. It's cool. A lot of this stuff, because I've never heard it before. So a lot of this
I've never heard
heard
anybody play that kind of riff before, honestly.
Yeah. And so, lyrically, there's not a lot of depth to this one. But musically, it's really interesting because it's kind of doing a heavier, almost metal kind of thing, but it's also still in that 90s alternative rock. It's like heavy 90s alternative rock
absolutely.
For this one. I guess is a weird.
No, I think you're spot on with that.
But it's interesting. It's and as a guy who typically doesn't like a lot of metal, like metal's not really my bag. This didn't strike me as unfun to listen to at all. It's just as heavy.
Yeah, it actually surprised me you said that. I didn't think you would gravitate towards that. So I'm glad you did, though.
Yeah.
I think that's part of their appeal for this band is that they can do heavier stuff and it's not offensive to you. It's actually...
it's musical.
It's musical, yes.
Yeah.
And I've always liked that, To be honest, when I first heard Metallica, it scared me, right? There's certain music that it took time for me to understand it, but... If you like this song already, that's a good sign, I think.
Yeah.
Because it's a heavy song.
It is a heavy tune. But, like I said, I'm so glad you turned me on to this because this is just a great little gem that I get to just play with for a while.
I can see how excited you are in your face right now.
Well, and I mean, I kind of wish that your gap between that little screen's just driving you nuts. But the little gap between you changing jobs, so we had a window to record, I kind of wish we had more time so I could have spent another couple weeks listening to these guys. That would have been kind of cool. Go ahead. Technical
difficulties here, but all right, show must go on. Here we go. Sorry.
All right, so anyway, that's Bombs Away.
Yeah, Bombs Away.
Your number 10 is the one that drew you in, right? The Oath.
Sure, yeah. I kind of started that because as I was thinking about the list, I knew it wasn't my favorite song by them, but I knew it was the one that really sucked me in. That was a song that was like, who is that? I want to know who this is. And it took me 20 years to figure it out for some reason. And shame on me. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I should have been more active in seeking them out, but that's the way it worked out for me. So
to me, this song is every bit as catchy and appealing to me now, 30 years later, as the first time I heard Ants Marching by Dave Matthews Band.
Sure. Yeah.
This song is anthemy. It's every bit, because Ants Marching was the one I saw. I saw the music video on VH1, and they're in this warehouse assembling it, kind of like Stop Making Sense style.
Sure. Like
that first music video for Dave Matthews, a little bit Stop Making Sense. And I was hooked. But musically, The Oath is doing everything for me that Ants Marching did to me the first time I heard it.
That's awesome.
All those years ago.
And I know how much you love Dave
Love me some Ants Marching, yeah.
And that's the one that starts out with just a snare on it, right?
Just,
I mean, like for a while. I mean, I love that. I just love that Carter had enough gumption to do that, and they supported that, because it's
just so smart because it built all this excitement.
Absolutely.
Once it happened, everyone knew it was coming.
It's like tension, almost. Yeah.
But simple tension.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
so the Oath is also our first crossover.
Okay,
but I put it at number 1. Like
Awesome.
mine's way high.
Okay, that's fine.
But it's exactly for that reason. I just felt like if for me when I do these essential lists, I'm like, okay, which one of these songs is the the tune, the anthem-y one, and it brought you in. It reminded me of when I was brought into Dave Matthews all those years ago, and that same kind of excitement around a tune, which is why I put it in that spot. But this is a great song.
Yeah, it is.
You have anything else to say, or we want to move on to number 9s here?
Yeah, I'm good. I mean, definitely check out the Oath. I mean,
yeah, if nothing else, listen to that.
Listen to that song and then take it from there. I think you'll like it. So,
all right. So then my number 9 is "All Our Days Are Numbered."
Okay.
So we went back and listened to it because for me some of these songs are pretty new, so I wanted to just get my ears on it again and do a little pause break. But this one's another one that's kind of one of the heavier ones. And it's just a straight ahead kind of groove, but it's a little bit heavy. It's also got this cool lick where he's like doing something where it sounds like a car horn, but it's doing it with guitar. Yeah, it's just a cool little effect. And we kind of both agreed to it's a little swamp rocky.
Yeah,
it's a little, feels like Louisiana kind of swamp rock. Not really Allman Brothers or not classic Southern rock because that's not the right vibe, but.
Well, the Bayou song, it's got a Bayou sound, a little feel to it. I think that he, like I was trying to say, I think he does respect Dave Matthews and listen to some of that stuff. You know how sometimes you listen to stuff and it seeps its way through.
Permeates or percolates.
He's not purposely doing it. I don't think he's ripping anybody off.
That's not the vibe I get from
what's
these
funny,
guys.
this song, though, starts out with a really heavy sound. And then it's also got a little bit of a poppy sound, and it also has a ethereal thing going on.
Sure. When it gets to the chorus, it calms way down and it gets much more melodic, and then it kind of gets trotting, a little swamp rocky there through the verses. And,
absolutely. That's a deep cut. I mean, I think it's cool to see you pick a heavy song and then a deep cut for these guys.
Well, a lot of these, I kind of just went through everything once. And I was like, yeah, okay, this one. And then I listen to another one, I'm like, oh, this one. And then I kind of go, okay, this one's getting bumped because this one is kind of like that one, but better. And I didn't have a lot of repetition. I've heard all these songs probably 3 times total at this point.
I'm surprised you got that far though. That's pretty impressive.
Well, that's part of the fun of this for me, of the whole show, is that I get to do my homework. Sure. I don't have to do my homework. I get to listen to these bands that I'm either kind of familiar with, and I get a deep dive, or I get to explore a band I've never heard of and do a more surface thing. But that's the whole point of the show, is that I want people to know. I'm not trying to sell anything. I'm not trying to be some kind of expert at anything. I'm just a guy who plays some drums, and I'm kind of good at it. And I know the elements of music, and I want to talk with other musicians who know the elements of music and discuss how we think about and talk about other artists and other music in the world. Yes. And have everyone listen in to how these interactions happen and how cooperative music really should be, and usually is, but sometimes we get some competition stuff that can be toxic. And I have an agenda to try to eliminate as much of that as possible.
Sure.
I mean, some personalities don't jive in a band. But let that be the end of that story. Yeah. Some personalities should not be in a band together.
Right.
Doesn't mean that you shouldn't give each other a hug when you see them next time.
Right. No, absolutely. And as far as your show goes, I know that you told me about the concept, and I think you're nailing it, Josh. From the first show, I've been listening to it. I haven't listened to quite every show. But I really like the idea and the concept. I think it works out pretty well. I even questioned some things, and you explained it to me. But I really like what you're doing. I'm inspired by it. I'm glad I could be a part of it, and I would encourage any other musician in this area to also take part in this. and have fun with it. Because
And really, I'm open to anyone who's in the arts community. You know, anyone who can competently talk about music. And I mean, venue owners, other producers, anyone who's like working in this style, because we're all part of this project together.
Yes.
And sometimes there's some adversarial stuff because the venue owners are the ones paying and we're the ones receiving. And there's some weird stuff with that. But in general, like I reached out to Scott Vietz at SRT, who's the producing director, I think is his official title.
Yeah.
And he was interested in coming on. I think Scott would be a great guest. And he's a musician too, but that's not the hat he wears 90% of the time now.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that's a good idea, and I think it's good to have all the different kind of players in the musical area I mean, for some reason, right now, I think someone that would be good to have on the show would be Rod Harris.
Yeah, I'd like to have Rod come on.
Someone like that. Maybe someone that books shows at Ironstone. Someone that can give that kind of perspective. But or the casino. I don't know, but I think you're on the right track, and I'm excited to see what you do moving forward. So thank you for having me on the show.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for coming on. So your number 9, which ironically is my number 2, we're kind of going exactly backwards, is That Song.
That Song, yeah.
And this is a brilliant arrangement.
A great song.
Great composition.
And I think I had heard this one before too, after The Oath. And once again, I'm like, who is that? Because it doesn't sound like the same band that's doing The Oath. Like I wouldn't have put 2 and 2 together on that.
Right.
But I liked it. And it's funny because it's like they wrote a song about that song, and that song is that song.
Yeah.
Because they're singing a song about the song that you really like and you want to hear it.
Exactly. It's
every time you see that band. Yeah.
And this is really put together with. I don't want to minimize what this is because it really is a good tune. But it's got a lot of like kind of cliche stuff from the 90s in it.
Sure.
It's like all the cool little tricks from all those 90s tunes. They kind of like put into this one thing to make it that song, but it still works.
Yeah.
Even though it's kind of a little bit tongue in cheek.
It is.
It's so enjoyable to listen to.
It is. That's a great observation. I think that he picked up on some of that stuff, and that maybe he was poking it at people a little bit, but also himself in a way,
right,
by having that song. And I know if I go to the concert, I'm going to want to see that song.
Yeah.
Live. And it's got a great melody. It's got a great feel. Like I said, on the live version of this, it even reminds me of The Cure a little bit with the melody that they're doing, which I didn't pick up on the recording as much. But
the live version's got a little deeper into that stylistic choice.
That song is awesome.
And I don't want to like oversell this, but I also don't want to undersell it. Like this is like not superficial stuff.
No,
like none of these tunes like have a superficial quality. I've kind of unfortunately like bagged on U2 as much as I've done it, but U2 has a lot of kind of stuff that's interesting to me, but I'm not excited about it.
Sure, yeah.
Like U2 is sort of like the band that I feel pretty comfortable saying that it's not for everybody. A lot of people don't like them. Some people really like them, but a lot of their stuff just feels kind of superficial to me, like in its presentation. And this band doesn't have that. This feels very purposeful and methodical to every part of the production. And then the live shows, we can't put any of them on the actual thing.
Sure.
But if you get any kind of interest in this band and go, well, I'm curious, I'm going to go check it out. Check out some of the YouTube stuff too, because these guys are very good live.
Yes. They actually work with the company Suhr, SUHR. They build guitars, basses, amps, and the live concert they do for their concert series is some of the best stuff you'll see. And they also have different years, and he's playing with different players, and they sponsor a lot of players. And it seems like it's really high quality.
And he's kind of like their pocket promo guy.
I think so, yeah.
Seems like that's the relationship
I think
there.
he's probably the most established guy that they have. They have a few other guitar players, I know that. They have all their stuff seems really high quality. It seems like to me.
Yeah.
It's kind of piqued my interest a little bit, because he sounds really good.
Yeah.
And he's got different styles of guitars. He has his own signature model.
Well, they sure are able to make really clean.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
It's just very crisp, clean sounding. It's got good tone. It's not. I don't hear tones that are like new. It's a lot of like sounds that we've heard before. It's not reinventing like sort of the guitar tone sound palette.
Right.
But it's delivering quality tones that I've heard before, but really crisp.
It really sounds pro, too.
Right.
It's like, wow.
Yeah. So at number 8 here, we have a true crossover. Both of us at number 8 put the exact same song completely independently of each other.
Yes.
This is because a lot of times with like the other guys, I mean, a little behind the curtain peek, we do look a little bit like Grover and I like, well, you picked this one, right? Because there are certain tunes we didn't want to leave off. I
didn't even look at your list.
I didn't look at yours.
Right.
These, you and I, for this band, because I didn't know anything. There's nothing that was important to me. I just made my list.
I definitely didn't want to influence you at all.
Right.
Either, right. I just wanted you to organically gravitate towards whatever you gravitated towards.
Yeah. But at number 8, we both put the song "Locomotive."
Locomotive, man, what a powerhouse song that is.
It is. This is just trucking right along.
It is. So, with songs you have memories or whatever. This song, the first time I heard it, I was on the east side. I planned it out like, okay, it's coming out. I'm going to listen to it when I'm on the east side on 395. It's one of my favorite places. But we were going to Mount Whitney area, right?
Okay.
And it was super hot. My air conditioning wasn't working. We were dying. We're roasting, right? And I just, there's a song before called Voices. But when Locomotive came on, it didn't matter how hot it was. I didn't care. I was just trucking along on 395. I had that kind of highway feel going. I felt, the Locomotive. What a powerful song it is. I mean,
it is
rhythmically powerful. And it's awesome.
Interestingly to me, it's not cliche. It's got that like a driving drum beat, but it's not like a train beat. It's not.
No, it's not.
I mean, because when you hear Locomotive, you're like, okay, it's going to have some kind of, and this has that kind of beat, but it doesn't necessarily sound like a train.
It's got those hits. It's like
right.
So it's like. And then when it kicks in, it's got that kind of feel to it. It just moves.
Yeah, but it doesn't. Yeah, it's a cool tune.
It is.
Lot
it's hard to describe it.
It is because I think the name makes you think it's going to be, like Aqualung, like Locomotive Breath or something.
Sure, yeah.
Like I think there's like this weird pre-association, and it's not Aqualung.
Yeah, and it's not the train beat like you're talking about.
Right, it's not like a New Orleans or.
It's almost like it's the Big Rex style of Locomotive, right? Because it really is.
Yeah.
I mean, to be honest with you, it's a very unique sounding song, and that's what I love about it, And it's like, where did that come from? How do you write a song like that? That's very interesting to me. Much less to have a concept about Locomotive. Sure, that's a common theme. Sure, but just the whole band and rhythmically, all the hits and just the feel of it. It's great choice for number 8. I agree with you. 100%.
Yeah, man. So we doubled up. So that was number 8. So we'll go to my number 7, which is One Good Piece of Me. And we're going to pause again so I can listen to this again to make sure I'm talking about the right song. All right, so I just wanted to make sure I had ears on that. So One Good Piece of Me. We talked about this kind of a Rick Springfield sounding thing, maybe a little Peter Gabriel, but kind of more driving. But that ethereal Peter Gabriel thing from like So. Yeah, it kind of sounds like it could have been a So, but he doesn't sound like Peter Gabriel as a singer, but the style's kind of like that. Yeah. And then it just gets into this driving thing, and it's just trucking along. It's a good tune.
It's catchy.
Yeah.
Good melody. I mean,
both of us just seem to continue to be in disbelief that these guys aren't on regular radio airplay. And it really kind of is wild to me.
I mean, I don't know that he maybe embraced going in that direction, but that's what he was doing. It was part of his toolbox, and he could do it well. So I don't see why any record company wouldn't have been all over that, you know?
Yeah, it really is a mystery, and maybe I'll dig in more and do it and see if we can kind of uncover the mystery. Because you were telling me these guys are like just playing like clubs, like
for the most part,
$20 cover charge clubs to see this band.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna say some of the venues. I don't think they hold more than, you know, a few hundred people, if that. You know, yeah, it's kind of mind blowing to me. So,
yeah, I'd love to like get these guys to come out here and do a show.
Absolutely. Well, like Ironstone would be a great venue for that, I think.
Yeah. Well, I know a couple people who might be able to pull some strings.
We'll see it happen in the future with Playlist Parlay and Josh. So,
yeah. We'll see how it grows.
Yeah.
But yeah, great tune. You know, you said it's one of the deeper cuts for you. I think this is a tune that I would expect to hear on the radio. Once you hear it, you're like, oh, I would expect to just hear this on the classic rock rotation.
Well, sure, it's got the elements of that, right? You know, it's catchy, it's got a good melody, it's got, you know, some different elements that are grabbing you. So I mean, why isn't it on the radio?
Yeah,
you know?
these are all really good players, but I think that compared to some of the other bands we've talked about, we talk about the extreme skill level of all the players.
Sure.
Like Rush, you talk about Neil and Geddy, and these guys are just monstrously skilled players. These guys are monstrously skilled songwriters.
Yes, they are.
And that's the sort of the difference. I mean, they're all excellent players and they're doing what they do, but this stuff is played a little bit more simply. They don't need to have the depth of chops that Neil Peart does to play this kind of music. But kind of like the Killers episode with Grover, this is just good, happy, fun music. I mean, in fact, in a lot of ways, this is kind of like the Killers, but a little bit earlier.
Sure.
But just that turn it on in the car and go for a drive. I got to get down to L.A.
And that's actually one of my favorite things to do with Big Wreck. Is just listen to music, listen to them while I'm driving, whether it's, you know, for play or work, or out in the woods or on the road, you know.
Yeah. Well, great band. I really like that cut. I'm glad that I could bring one to you that you kind of didn't know as well,
good.
too.
Yeah, awesome. I
so
like it.
Then your number 7 is A Place to Call Home.
Yes, it is. That song, it kind of grabbed me. The first thing I like, it's got a real guttural, low sound at the beginning, and it starts out with that sound. I know it's a guitar. He's got some muddy, fat sound on it, you know. I don't know how he's getting that sound. It's intriguing to me. So that kind of attracted me. But then it turns into, it has a great melody, and it's A Place Called Home. And in my mind, he's referencing going through a divorce and being at this house.
Right.
And, you know, kind of reminiscing about what was and how it feels to him now. Yeah. You know, I don't always delve into lyrics as much as, you know, I should, but I, for some reason, picked up on that, you know. And
this is the first one that also lyrically jumped out at me. He has something to say in this tune. Yes. It's not just catchy lyrics, but he's got something that he needed to get off his chest, and it turned into a song.
Yeah, and I think he's actually got a lot of songs that are talking about going through that, because I think it was his way of dealing with it, you know, is channeling that into his music, you know, because I pick up on that same kind of thing in other songs, you know. But this one, I just love it. It's one of the songs I couldn't stop listening to it, and I basically listen to it after I play it once. I got to hear it again, you know. And I just love the way it builds. And then there's actually kind of like a reprise at the end of the album that's more of an acoustic song, but the melody of the main hook of the song is just a great melody. It really gets kind of lodged in your skull, and it's something that you don't go crazy hearing over and over again. It makes, I know he's talking about home and divorce and whatever, but that song and the melody and the words are comforting, and maybe was what he was doing.
Well, he kind of has a, you know, it might be kind of a sacrilege to compare, but I feel like this guy's got kind of a Paul McCartney quality to him, where he's really got this really cool earbug skill. Like he just kind of understands what is okay to repeat and what's an interesting sound. You know, Paul did that, but Paul writes 2 songs a day and has for the last 80 years. You know,
Sure.
But this guy like really just has this ability to kind of go, this will be catchy.
Yeah.
You know, and can play it kind of on repeat or almost ad nauseum, and you don't get tired of it. It's just a simple, good sounding thing. And that might be part of the reason that all these songs just sound like hits to me.
Sure.
Because he understands the trick.
Sure. I mean, that's something that I feel like, he's definitely worked on it, but he's kind of got a gift, I think, for that as well. You know, I know he probably always did that, wasn't as that refined, but I think he's found a great comfort zone, and it's something that he nurtures. And this song, I can't think of any other band or song that's even remotely like this song, So that's why it's, definitely on my list.
Yeah, and that's a good point. Is this is kind of an outlier sound even to Big Wreck and then to everything else. This is a pretty unique sounding piece of music.
And on that note about, I'm not going through a divorce, but we have our home on the market right now.
That's a stressful thing.
And well, it's not so stressful. I'm emotionally attached to that home. We've been there for so long, and as you're leaving it, and you have all these memories attached to it. I relate to this song even more.
Sure.
But on to bigger and better. How about smaller things and
smaller, more manageable things?
Yeah. So, but it's a great song. Highly recommend A Place Called Home.
Cool, man. So my 10, 9, 8, 7. My number 6 is Ghosts, which is another crossover for us. This is your number 2.
Yes.
So another tune that we both really like. Man, this has got some ethereal, really. I want to say like maybe Disney-esque kind of like it's just got like some vibes to it that are really, really smartly produced.
Yes.
I don't remember seeing this one live.
Yeah, it's better live.
It's even better live. Wow.
It's better live, especially when the bass player does his intro to it. It's really cool.
Okay.
Dave is a really great bass player, but this song actually it has a Pink Floyd element to it.
Right.
It's got this this repeating rhythm, a la Another Brick in the Wall. But what he does over that is different from Pink Floyd.
That's right. This is the one that's got that whole bass movement thing through the whole thing.
Yeah.
That's kind of, yeah.
Yeah, and once again, the melody is just a great melody. I mean, and it's unique, and it just sticks in your head.
Yeah, it's certainly got the Pink Floyd vibe to it.
Yeah,
but again, not like feels like it's a ripoff.
No, he's not ripping them off. It's just kind of has that that droning like kind of D thing going on. The other thing I love about this song is the solo that he does. The very first part of it is a la Stevie Ray Vaughan, Let's Dance solo, just absolutely nailing it. Like so much intensity, ripping, like almost breaking the strings. It's just very a la Stevie Ray Vaughan, but I love that because, it's not like Stevie Ray Vaughan is on the forefront of the music scene, right?
Right.
And the solo is great, and then it turns into something. It transitions in the middle of the solo, and I've seen plenty of interviews with him and by guitar players that have YouTube channels, and they want him to play that because they want to see how do you transition from Stevie Ray Vaughan style into this other style that's like more Ian Fletcher Thornley, right?
Right. Right.
And it's just it's like a trick he has. It's like almost a magic trick. It's like because you can't believe what you're hearing and seeing,
Sure.
So it's a really cool thing, and I know that as a guitar player, I appreciate it. So.
Yeah, it's another good
Ghost,
tune.
yeah.
We're getting into a lot of these crossovers now, but it's just interesting that there's so many of them that that hit us.
Yeah.
So your next one on your list is "Blown Wide Open," which is my number 3. So you want to go and talk about "Blown Wide Open"? This one, another one that the lyrics kind of I liked.
Oh yeah,
because the very outro has just got like this repeating thing, and then it's kind of. Anyway, you go and talk about it.
Well, yeah,
but
Blown Wide Open. It's Monique, my wife's probably her favorite song.
Okay,
she had that on repeat. It was released in 1998.
Wow.
So it's a song that stands the test of time. Blown Wide Open. What does that mean? It could mean many things. It doesn't mean on the surface what you think it means. I mean. Whatever he did to come up with that, I mean, and it's also one of the songs that he has done different ways. He's approached it differently. Kind of like Sting does sometimes with the Police and stuff like that. But it's in drop D. It's a real slow. It goes between D and A. It's really open and airy, which I like. It's just something that just kind of sucks you in. And it's just a great song. Yeah,
I agree. Another one that I can't believe this isn't a hit. I can't believe this it hasn't been on the radio. Right. I can't believe I can listen to 104.1 for a week and not hear this 4 times.
Yeah, it'll never make it on a channel like that either.
Right.
A station, because they have a corporate list, and these guys aren't on it, unfortunately.
Yeah, and maybe that's just part of it, is that, for me, in 1998, I was 20.
Yeah.
So, I was getting into stuff and didn't have, and there's no streaming access to stuff back then. And these guys weren't on my radar, but maybe they were, more known to people who were audiophiles at that time.
I guess.
And then they just somehow didn't end up on the corporate list now, and so they've just fallen into obscurity.
Well, see, and I thought that song was a newer song. I mean, as I was piecing together the puzzle of Big Wreck, and it wasn't until I saw like an interview they did before this concert, and it was like in 1998. Yeah, I just wrote this song, Blown Wide Open, and I just like blew me wide open. Like, what?
Yeah,
that song has been around since 1998, and I'm just finding out about it. I mean, that blew me wide open,
Yeah, and I mean, this song could have been recorded last year.
I know.
It doesn't sound like it's dated.
No,
to
it's
me.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely not.
All right. So that puts us up at my number, I don't know, whatever it is. Let's see. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6.
5.
My number 5, which is Wolves. And I was surprised this didn't make your list, because I know how much of a fan you are of like odd time signature stuff.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And Wolves is not an odd time signature song, but the drum groove is played like it should be an odd time. It's a very interesting groove.
Yeah.
I should probably take the time to break it down, but basically when you like play a drum groove in 7, the second snare drum hit has to be early or late to kind of allow for that 8th note that's missing.
Yep.
And so you have that backbeat that's displaced. Well, this guy is, whoever the drummer is in this particular album,
right,
is displacing the snare drum so it feels like it's in 7, but that extra 8th note is still there.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like Herbie Hancock's Chameleon a little bit, where it's got a little bit of a little bit of hitch in your step for the drum groove.
That's a great comparison. Yeah.
And but I just think it's a very smartly constructed drum part specifically.
Yes.
And then the bass player's completely bought into what the drummer's doing.
Yep.
So the whole bottom end, the whole foundation of this tune is doing this trick where it feels like it's an odd time groove, and it's actually in 4. It's just in 4, but it does not feel like it is, even though it is, which I think is really fun.
Yes.
And on top of it, it's just a good tune.
Yep.
But very specifically, those elements really are like, wow, this is interesting.
Yeah.
And this is one of the first tunes, because when you listen to like the Essentials playlist on Spotify, like it puts all the popular tunes first and you get into the other stuff.
Yeah.
This is the first one where I was like, I'm very clearly in like the B-side stuff. Yeah. And then I got to this one like, well, this is like just jumped at me.
Yes,
You know, it was like the alien face hugger.
Yeah,
You know, just like
absolutely.
it just jumped right at me. This is so cool.
Yeah, and Wolf's like the way I take it, he's kind of talking about the girl he's with and how she's, basically guys are always checking her out and trying to talk to her, and and he sees it, and and he's just basically saying like, yeah, I know what's going on here, but yeah, it's a great song. It probably should have made my list. It's probably the one I regret not putting on there, as I was thinking about it, but I tell you what, I really was like, wow. I mean, it's hard to pick 10 songs, but it was easy to pick 10 songs. Next thing you know, I'm like, wow, I left out that song.
Exactly.
So yeah, I just I didn't like really challenge myself too much on some of the decisions I made because it felt natural to me, But yeah, Wolves is a great song, and I'm glad you picked it.
Yeah, man. And then your number 5 is Skybunk March.
Yes.
This is cool. This is I didn't hear this. When I was doing my research, I didn't see this song. Yeah, so all I was meant to say was that like on the essential list of like selected things from Spotify, this song wasn't on that list, so I hadn't heard it until you picked it. But this is fantastic.
Yes.
It kind of is a march a little bit. Like it's kind of got that groove from a drummer point of view, from like a drum set.
Okay.
But the most interesting thing is all the tempo changes.
Yes.
And how tightly these guys are feeling speeding up and going into different grooves, and there's a lot of fluid movement.
Yes.
In this. It's your pick, so tell me more about it.
I mean, honestly, like the first time I heard it, I'm like, whoa, what's happening right now? As a musician, right away you're picking up, they're speeding up, okay? But it's purposely done. And they're in lockstep doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
And and the tempo increases so slow that you feel it happen, but then you're like, is it really happening?
Right.
Because it's not like they're speeding up. It's a very gradual tempo increase.
Yes. So this song is instrumental.
Yeah.
There's no lyrics. It shows their skills off as a band, as locked in. It's awkward sounding. There's some weird notes. There's a tempo change. There's it locks into a groove and then it goes back.
There's a couple different groove changes. Yeah.
So and it's just interesting. I've never quite heard a song like that before.
It kind of reminds me of like the Rush epic 15-minute tunes from like the albums back, from the
Hemispheres
early,
and stuff
right?
like
the
that.
Hemispheres kind of stuff,
right?
Where those guys are just going on this musical odyssey. It's not that long of a cut, but it reminds me of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Or even like some of the rock opera kind of stuff from The Who, but that was much more structured. This is a less structured thing. This is more like the Rush stuff to me.
Sure, yeah. To me, once again, I'd love to sit in a room with Ian and ask him, how do you come up with this stuff? What was your approach? How does this happen? It's very unique, and I will say this. He definitely has some influences, and one of them is Steve Morse, who played with the Dixie Dregs.
Okay, yeah.
Great player. He's also played with Deep Purple for a long time, but Steve Morse is an incredible player, very unique, and maybe some of it came from that. I don't know. But obviously this guy is highly diverse. He's listened to jazz. He's listened to different tempo changes. He's not only listened to it, he's digested it, absorbed it, and then done his own thing with it, and it's just amazing, honestly. It's kind of, that's a really deep track, not many people would probably pick that, at all.
But I think on an essential playlist, this absolutely belongs because it's so different than everything else that's going. Just being an instrumental and being a band showpiece. So I just made a comment earlier about how the real treat to this band is the songwriting and the composition, and not necessarily outstanding performances. And then we get this tune, which is about a very high level of musicianship from all the players in the band.
Absolutely.
And I bet this tune has a real different feel if one personnel member changes. Like you try to keep the tune.
Oh, sure.
But one player being a different player, this kind of tune is very player dependent because you're putting so much of your personality through your instrumental.
Yes, absolutely. I think you're onto something with that. Big Wreck over here.
Yeah, we're just you keep stepping on that
ripping
chord.
cords out and tearing up equipment. Can't take me anywhere.
All right, so number 4 is the other absolute true crossover. We both put Albatross at number 4. Completely independent of each other. This is wild that happened twice.
Great minds think alike, Josh.
That's right.
You know.
And, you know, when I heard Albatross, when I saw the title, I was like, well, is this like a Peter Green cover? You know, I didn't know if it was a cover. And no, it's its own thing. It has nothing to do with the Fleetwood Mac thing. But really interesting tune.
Yes.
You know, you want to go ahead and talk about it some more? And
Well, you know, it's a very. I think it's one of their. It's so It's a unique song. He plays slide in this song,
right?
And his control is just amazing. He's right up there with any of the best slide players I've ever heard in my life. But I mean, it just sounds amazing to me, you know. And every time I listen to it, I still feel amazed, like I've heard it for the first time. It's just like, wow, how does he make that sound so good? You know, the tone, the notes. You know, once again, how did he come up with that? I don't know, but keep doing it because.
Yeah, this is the one that I kind of made it to number 4 for me, specifically because this is the one where I really realized his technical proficiency. That this guy's a very clean, precise guitar player.
Yes.
There's no slop.
No,
you know, and some slop. And slop maybe is the wrong word, but some slop is real stylistic and thematic.
Well, sure, absolutely.
You know, like sometimes there's guys purposely dig into their slop because it's part of their signature sound.
Jimmy Page is a perfect example of that.
Yeah,
right?
or the Rolling Stones, who's going to live forever.
Oh, Keith Richards.
Keith Richards is another one that I think has got embraced the slop.
Neil Young. Too.
Yeah, there you go.
Right. You know,
but this guy, clean, precise, you know, like maybe one of the cleanest guitar players
ever
that I've ever really put ears on. Maybe Tim Reynolds, Tim's another real clean player.
Absolutely.
And he reminds me a lot from like at the high level. Tim, you don't hear his fingers slide. He's got such good technique, and this guy does too. And that's why Albatross made it for me. It wasn't so much the tune as much as I was like really listening to what he was doing and how crisp and clean it all sounds.
Yes, and you know the da 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 but da 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 da. It just digs right into you.
Yeah,
you can't. It's like wow, it's epic.
Yeah,
it sounds epic to me. You know, it's hard. I'm having a hard time describing. You know?
Well, it's like any of these. It's like any of the elite guitar players. Even if you're not into Steve Vai or Jeff Beck or Satriani, you can still appreciate listening to a cut of theirs. That these guys deserve the reputations that they have.
Sure,
and Ian, I think, also deserves to have that reputation, and he might for the people who know of him, but I think he's just so relatively unknown that he doesn't get to share the stage or that level of notoriety. But I think he's every bit as technically proficient as some of these other cats are.
I think he's right up there with the top players in the world. In some ways, he's got something they don't have, which is he can sing and write a song, and it's on a different level than some of the stuff.
Well, and we've been talking a lot about him as a guitar player, but also not only can he sing, he's just got a really kind of silky vocal tone. He's got like you said, he sounds like Chris Cornell, but there's a thing about like Sting where Sting's voice is just so rich
Yes.
that he can sing anything, and this guy's just got a voice too.
Yes.
Like it's just a good sounding vocal quality and tone, and he writes songs that showcase where his own voice can do.
Yes.
And I really like how he can get high and still sound good without screeching.
Right.
There's an element when I was listening to this that he kind of sometimes also sounds a little like David Lee Roth.
Yeah.
But without the wild screeches.
Yeah,
and David, I never felt like Lee Roth was like out of control. Like even though he was doing some wild stuff with his voice, he controlled it.
Yeah.
Ian doesn't go that far into the screech, but he's got great control and can incorporate that kind of stuff into these songs.
Yes, and his voice has evolved over the span of the band, and it's different, and it's something he has worked on, nurtured, found. He's been critical of himself. He altered his approach. I actually so there's a guy on YouTube that's a vocal coach, and he brought him on, and it was a great interview because I was glad this vocal coach recognized what he was doing. Right. He's approaching his vocals like he approaches the guitar. You know, he's putting that kind of effort and time into it.
Well, he's doing it, and I think Dave Matthews does this too, where he uses his voice more like an instrument than like a singer.
Absolutely.
And I think Ian's doing the same thing. Where he's approaching what vocally is happening like it's another instrument instead of like how a singer would have been trained to do it.
Great observation and great way you kind of articulated that.
Well, thank you. I'm getting better at this.
Yeah.
So that's Albatross for both of us.
Yes.
My top 3 now have already been talked about. They were all crossovers. So we're basically at your top 2 because your number 2's been talked about. So your number 3 is Overemphasizing, which was a song we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah.
So tell me about Overemphasizing.
Overemphasizing. I mean, that's another one where he's playing slide. It's got a really kind of mood about it. The song has a certain type of mood to it. It's kind of overemphasizing. I mean, how did he come up with that title? I mean, it's just interesting. I'm having a hard time describing it. First of all, he has a certain mood. He's playing slide. It's a slower kind of sound, but not slow enough where you're not going to follow it, right? And it's kind of deep and like emotional, I think.
Right.
It makes me feel emotion,
Yeah, I kind of got like the mood of the music is overstated, like overemphasized.
Yes.
Like I think he did a good job of not making it cliche or tongue in cheek, or it's not a trick, it's not a gimmick kind of a song.
No,
But the vibe of the actual composition of the thing is, I can't overstate enough. I can't tell you the like when someone's trying to like drive home a point.
Yeah, right.
And they feel like they said it, but you didn't respond appropriately.
Yeah.
So I need to say it again because I haven't felt like you are responding in a way that mimics or mirrors what I'm trying to convey.
Yeah.
And I think that that musically he nails in the musical composition of this that feeling of I'm telling you something and you're not responding correctly.
Right.
Like I just told you that like we need to take a break and you're like, okay, do you want to go get dinner? Like it's like like you didn't respond correctly.
Yeah. And
I'm a little confused by that. That's the vibe I got from this.
Yeah, you know what? You got a special talent for kind of articulating things in a way that cross between music and actual real life situation, because that's how that stuff relates to musicians, right?
Right.
It's how we translate things so people can relate to it. I think he's saying something that he deeply cares about, and he's not getting that careful response with the same emotion and same intent and same intensity, because the song is kind of intense as well.
Sure.
But yeah, I love the way you put that, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I feel like the intensity builds because like he states it and then he doesn't get the response, so he states it a little bit more clearly or more aggressively, and he's still not getting it. And we all experience that. I mean, people are distracted. Something that's important to you. Well, one of the cliche things that I say all the time these days is your emergency is not my emergency.
Right.
And you work in a field where I'm sure you experience that all the time.
Yes, sir.
Where you're doing your thing, you've got all your business taken care of. It's 3:30 in the afternoon. You get a cruise control for the next hour and a half, and that's great because you busted your butt this morning
on a Friday.
Right, exactly. And then somebody calls you at 5:15 and goes, "Oh my God, there's a big kerfuffle, and you need to help me solve it."
Yes.
No, I don't. It's 45 minutes to my weekend.
Yeah.
But he can't overemphasize the importance of this problem.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And you're like, bro, it's beer 30, man.
Right.
And so that's the sort of my mind's eye, the story that I'm hearing or visualizing when I heard this song. That kind of makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense, Josh, and I can't really add to it. So I'm glad that you were able, because I can't describe the song. It's something you need to listen.
It's a feel tune. It's not telling you a lot lyrically.
Yeah.
It's a feel thing.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's hard to describe music in a way that with words, because it's. I mean, we say music's a language, but it's a very unique kind of language sometimes. And this is a more. There's a lot of class to this song, I think.
Yeah.
It's a high class, high emotion, intense, overemphasized song. So, look it up.
Yeah. All right. And so then your number 2 was Ghosts, which was my number whatever it was. We already talked about it. And then the only other tune that we haven't talked about, which is your number 1.
Yeah.
Too Far Gone.
Too Far Gone. Yeah, this is a great song. I was really thinking it might make your list, because my favorite part about that song is the drums and the beat, and they do like a really I don't even know what the word is for it, like a breakdown, but it's just really tight.
Yeah,
it's so tight, just absolutely just locked in, and they do this great. The drummer does some great stuff in it. That's all I can say.
This was on my list when I was going through. I know this is one of the ones I crossed out. And I know when I crossed things out, it was mostly because I felt like another song that I heard came along that seemed to do it better, to emphasize that aspect of the sound better. And I don't remember which one I thought it was. It might have been that song. I think maybe like Too Far Gone is one I heard first, and then that song came on, and I think I crossed Too Far on.
Sure.
Far Gone for that song.
Honestly,
is what I think happened.
I struggled a little bit with what it was going to be by number 1. This song though, I have probably listened to that song more than any other song.
Yeah.
And it just, it's just got a great feel about it, and it just really makes you feel good, and it's just so tight. It's just, I put, a new stereo in my Jeep, and with a subwoofer, and I just cranked it. That song, I crank it. It just is so tight. I just can't say that enough, apparently. So I'll stop. Yeah,
well, and that's one of the aspects of this band is that they're well rehearsed. They're really tight, and they're not playing. I don't want to minimize anything, but they're not playing like Rush tunes. These tunes are not at that like an extreme level of difficulty.
No,
but they're high moderate difficulty. They're interesting. They're intricate. You have to know what you're doing, but you're not like. I think that this is all these tunes are things that if you're a player and you wanted to learn one of these tunes, you're going to be able to learn it.
Sure, this has got a great groove.
Right.
That's what I should be saying. It's got that da 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 da. It just makes you.
Oh yeah, this is the one that's got like that thing that kind of goes over the bar line. So it's another one that kind of feels like it's not in 4 when it is. Yeah. That's right.
It's just got a great groove, and then the drummer. Just kind of.
Oh, I bet I bumped this one for Wolves. I bet this is the one I bumped for Wolves. Actually,
well, honestly, I think that's where I was hemming and hawing. I go, there's a couple songs that I I feel like I'm leaving off the list, and I'm at my number one here. Like, what's happening right now? So I think that I just went with it because that's a song I think I've listened to the most on Spotify.
Yeah.
Right there.
Well, and that's great. And, I'm really glad that we got to approach a whole new band, at least to me, and that you shared it. And now we're sharing with a bunch of people.
Yes.
And I hope that as other people put ears on these things, that they don't just kind of go, Big Wreck, never heard of him, and not listen to this episode. And no one's going to hear me say that unless they listen to the episode. But, I really want to be putting out content that's interesting. If somebody brings me a band that I just have no affinity for, I'm going to say right up front that I've got low affinity for this band, but I'm still going to reasonably engage and have a talk about it.
Sure.
But this band is one I hadn't heard of and had really high affinity for. This is really good stuff.
And they have some good albums, they've had, I did a little research here, and they had some songs. I think Albatross is their highest charting song in the U.S.
Okay, that adds up.
Which is interesting that it wasn't The Oath, because that was...
Or that song.
Or that song, right? They've also had 11 different members in that band over their history.
Okay.
And there was a period of time where they broke up, and Ian did like a solo record. So he has some solo stuff that's actually really good as well.
Okay.
Under Thornley. And then he has a really great album under Ian Fletcher Thornley. And that's got a butterfly on it. And it's kind of a different approach that he takes as a songwriter. But, this is a great band. I hope we said enough to pique people's interest and look them up. I know we got our list on Spotify, and, you can thank us later when you run out to us in public, because these guys are awesome.
Yeah, so we're going to take a break, and we're going to narrow... I mean, we got a lot of crossovers anyway, so this is not a lot of negotiation.
Right, yeah.
But we're going to whittle this down to... From our individual list to one master list, and then rank them.
Yeah,
so we'll be right back.
Let the battle of the wits begin.
Here we go. All right, and after a very, very quick, easy negotiation, we had so many crossovers on this one. That's why it was probably pretty easy. We just kind of knocked this one out. So even in the ranking of this, neither one of us felt very strongly about the ranking. Like, just listen to these 10 songs.
Yeah.
The order, we almost kind of put in, I mean, I don't think we talked about like the bottom half. I just put them in an order that seemed like how I would do a record.
Sure.
I wanted to have a sense of listening quality. So you're listening to this as though it's one record, much less than an order or a ranking.
Yeah.
But our suggested listening order from top to bottom, number 1 will be Blown Wide Open. Number 2 is That Song. Number 3 would be The Oath. Number 4 is Too Far Gone. Number 5 would be Albatross. Number 6 would be Locomotive. Number 7 would be Ghosts. Number 8 would be Wolves. Number 9 would be Sky Bunk March, and number 10 is One Good Piece of Me. And I think that makes for a really good listening experience in that order toward the end. And really, this is one of the times where don't think of this list on this one as a ranking.
Yeah.
Think of it more as this is, I think, the way it should be presented to you. Just, when you get the playlist, just listen to the cut from beginning to end. And if you're into this after listening to 10 songs, there's a lot more good stuff to listen to from these guys.
And those 10 songs will take you on quite a journey.
I agree.
A musical journey. So it's,
Yeah. So, I'm really excited that you're looking to get back into this new gig for you, and you feeling like you got your mojo back.
Absolutely.
And moving on from the house, getting to the smaller space, and looking to get back into the music scene.
Yes.
I'm excited for when that happens.
Yes.
And maybe we'll talk, and I'll be even a part of it.
Yes, sir. I'm looking forward to what's coming down the road. It's just an idea right now, but I think there's going to be some more stuff happening, and I want to tap into people that are, I have chemistry with, and you're one of them, for sure. And, Otra, I think, was a fun band for us, and that was kind of our musical introduction to each other, and I think we have some more chapters to write. But with that said, we'll see what happens here, and I thank you for having me as part of the show. I think good things are going to come from the show, and I'm happy to be a part of it, and looking forward to the next episode. So
Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on and introducing me to some new music. It's always exciting when we get to, as we get older. So I was just listening. I might have even been Joe Rogan that was talking about how, like at about age 35, we just don't listen to new music. We just want to keep listening to the stuff that we already know.
Sure, yeah.
And so here I am. I just had my 46th birthday a couple weeks ago.
Sure.
And I can't tell you how good it feels to be introduced to something brand new that I actually really enjoyed. So thanks, man. I appreciate that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm kind of a weird individual. Like, I find out about this band way too late, in my opinion. There's certain bands that grow on me that I don't like when I first hear them. There's other bands I instantly like, but it's kind of strange how, as a fan of music, you gravitate towards certain types of music. But, there's so much out there, here's another one to listen to. So, what a great place to do it on Spotify. So.
Yeah. Take a chance on that album cover that doesn't really appeal to you. Read the book that's got a bad title.
Right.
Watch the movie that's got a lame cover. Sometimes there's some gems out there.
Take a chance, right?
Exactly. Well, everybody, this is Sky Kaufman, and thanks for another great episode.
Thanks, Josh.
All right, buddy.